Good afternoon. This is day 99 of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. Right now, we're going to talk about investments with Serhii Tsivkach, Executive Director of UkraineInvest, Government Investment Promotion Office. Good afternoon, Serhii. Good afternoon. Greetings. Mr. Tsivkach, my first question is quite paradoxical. What is UkraineInvest doing during the wartime when the investment climate is not very conducive right now? Well, we have even more work now than before the war. Right now, we are engaged in helping those investors that are still operating in Ukraine. We want to make sure that their companies can continue operations business as usual. We support them with permitting documents when necessary, with logistics, with business relocation if needed. And in parallel, we are doing a lot of analytics. We are assessing the current developments in Ukraine. We are trying to understand how this illegal and unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine impacts not only Ukraine, but also the entire region and global markets. And by dint of this analysis, we plan our work, when to engage investors, where to do it, in which sectors. On the one hand, we are supporting businesses, both domestic and international, but on the flip side of things, we are also planning investment recruitment in the near future. What should be done so that Ukraine will become more investment appealing despite the war? First and foremost, we need to bring this war to a halt. This should be our number one priority. And while we are inching towards our victory, while we are approaching this historic point in the fate of our country, we need to continue our work on the regulatory policy, on investment incentives, how to support businesses, and the government has been doing a lot in this regard. We can see loans at a zero interest rate. We can see reduced tax load on individuals and business entities. Upwards of 6,000 companies have already taken out these loans at a zero interest rate. It's a good signal for foreign investors. Why? Because they can see that the government is taking good care of business even during wartime. Not only are we thinking about the development of territories and communities, but we are also facilitating economic development. We can see growing interest on the part of investors. And I would like to mention that in the near future, one company will launch a major investment project in Ukraine. This company was one of the first ones to have left the market of the Russian Federation because of their militaristic policy and illegal actions against Ukraine. And now this company will commence its operations in Ukraine. We are also tracking down the situation in Russia in terms of their investment climate and investment market. And we can see that over 1,000 companies have already stated that they will terminate their activities either partially or fully. We are particularly interested in 370 some companies that announced their exit from Russia, and 171 companies that announced that they will put their investment plans on hold, because we believe that these companies can potentially launch their operations in Ukraine. We are in contact with each and every company from this list. We are discussing those incentives that they might be interested in, where they would like to receive land plots, which conditions and terms our government should offer to them, so that they will be motivated to launch their operations either during the war or right after the war is over. So let me reiterate that some of the investment projects are already being launched, even despite the military action. And right after the war, the number of such projects will definitely mount. Any questions from the audience? I have one as well. The Davos World Economic Forum is already in the books, and the Ukrainian delegation there communicated with the international business on their engagement in the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine. Do you think that it's a real prospect? 100%, and this is something that I referenced in my opening remarks. Companies are interested in investing. They already have these plans, and that will definitely happen. Before the outbreak of the war, UkraineInvest supported 28 projects under the law on investment nannies. Well, the full title of this law is the state support for major investment projects. So on a daily basis, we are in communication with these companies. And as of today, upwards of 80% of these projects intend to resume their investment projects in Ukraine right after the end of the war. As regards big companies, I believe that there is a significant space for cooperation with Ukraine in the twinning format. What is a twinning format? It's a partnership program for the sake of a single goal. We know that several countries have already articulated their willingness to invest in the recovery of specific regions. For example, Great Britain is ready to invest in the recovery of Kyiv region. Denmark is ready to invest in the recovery of Mykolaiv region. We also know that one of the US states, the state of Mississippi, has announced that they will become a twin region for Khmelnytsky region. This is unprecedented in the history of the United States of America. This is something that never happened before. And the same holds true of large international companies. They are capable of investing in specific economic sectors. They can also cooperate with specific companies or regions of Ukraine for the purpose of reconstructing territories, recovering businesses, but they can also do that for the sake of making money together, because Ukraine has always been and will always be a jurisdiction where companies have congenial conditions for making money. We have 20 out of 30 critical minerals that are used in modern technologies. We all know that our agricultural sector has to shift from raw materials to added value production. We will be in need of technologies, and those international companies that enter our agribusiness will be positioned to take advantage of that. After the war, assets will be quite inexpensive, especially right after the end of the war. So this is an opportune time for investments in Ukraine. You were talking about agribusiness or agricultural processing alone. Ukraine will be able to receive equipment amounting to 20 billion USD until 2025, and we will have sufficient raw materials to produce end products to be consumed by Europeans, Americans, the British, and all our other international partners that have an avid interest in cooperation with us and in helping Ukraine develop and transition to a completely new level. This is of the utmost importance. We have to rebuild Ukraine. We call it Ukraine 2.0. This is the way we dub it within UkraineInvest. So it's all about new, technological, successful, trendy Ukraine, a Ukraine that countries will feel privileged to work with. All this will definitely come to fruition right after the end of the war. Any questions from the audience, please? Can we view the future reconstruction of Ukraine as an investment opportunity for Western companies? We already hear that European Union and some other partners of ours are ready to invest hefty amounts in the recovery of Ukraine. Is the government planning to create some special conditions or be very targeted in engaging private investors in the reconstruction of Ukraine? The engagement of the private sector in the reconstruction of our country will be an important element indeed. I don't really think that we need to offer some sort of special conditions and terms for specific companies. We just need to craft congenial conditions for all investors operating in Ukraine, both domestic and international. At the same time, it's very difficult for us to secure a competitive environment, favorable conditions for each and every business, for their investment activities, continued simplification of procedures. We need to facilitate and streamline cooperation with Obelenерgo, because we cannot really make companies wait for years to be connected to electric grids. The same holds true of land plots, you name it. It's an important issue indeed, and we will definitely attend to it as soon as possible, because we need to catch the moment and take advantage of emotional investments. What do I mean by emotional investments? As I have already mentioned, Ukraine is very popular right now. It's trendy. Globally, unfortunately, not because of the good reasons, but we have what we have. And this is something that we should take advantage of and tap into for the sake of our economic development. There will be no restrictions on the number of companies that we are ready to engage, but we need to brace ourselves for these projects, programs, and initiatives. Some investment incentives are already incorporated in our legislative framework, but they need to be refined, and we need to also devise insurance programs for investments, insurance during the wartime and in the post-war period. This is something that we need to do together with the government and private investors. We also need to give thought to access to cheap funding and mixed funding opportunities. What exactly am I talking about? We can see funds coming into our country from both governments and donors, but when we're talking about the implementation of specific projects, especially in the sector of production, there are great opportunities for merging sources of funding. For example, donor funds, governmental money, both domestic and international. So this is something that we can mix with the private funds to secure the stability and sustainability of projects. We just need to launch some initial investment projects, and then we will have a long line of investors ready to operate in Ukraine. What matters to investors? Trust and conducive environment. Investors need to understand that by investing in a specific project, they will receive profits, and they will have a return on their investments with some interest. There's a lot of trust in Ukraine and Ukrainian people. Ukrainians have proven that they are capable of defending their soil and thus defending their businesses. And this is something that we can see in the position of the Ukrainian government, parliament, and the president of Ukraine. They have demonstrated that in dire times, they did not flee the country. They continue protecting Ukraine. Ukrainians defended their homes. Ukraine's armed forces are defending the entire territory of Ukraine. And it's a significant factor indeed, because this behavior has enhanced the level of trust in Ukraine. And now we need to combine it with practical investment mechanisms. I would like to revert to the issue of Russia to explain the loss of credibility and the loss of trust. We can see that the level of FDI in Russia has decreased by 95.8%. I'm not really sure about the 4.2% that stayed in Russia. Most likely, these are Russian companies that invest via international jurisdictions. But we can also see that the trust in them will not be restored for years and years to come. That will definitely not happen within the next generation. Gazprom has exited the London Stock Exchange, so their shares will not be traded on international markets. It's an example of how you can lose trust and credibility for a long time. We are in a completely opposite situation. We do have some challenges related to the raging war, but we are trying to fine-tune some mechanisms and procedures, but the trust that we have gained right now will allow us to develop our country very quickly like never before. Serhii, thank you very much for the positive news and for your positive perspective on the issue of investments. Thank you very much. I would like to remind everyone that we had Mr. Serhii Tsivkach, Executive Director of UkraineInvest, Government Investment Promotion Office with us. Thank you.